Alright, now that you've blown your entire Christmas budget on yourself, way to go, dumbass. Maybe you should get your family something to remind them that you actually give a fuck, and remind them that family is important during this tube-tacular holiday time. While you listen to your crazy-ass uncle tell stories of Christmas past, or you are that crazy-ass uncle like me that tells stories of Christmas past while people are drinking to go, maybe if we drink, he won't realize we don't really give a shit about his stories. Nevertheless, let's give him something to talk about this holiday season, something about family, something about video games, something about horror, and the horrors of family, and all that other fun shit. And kids. Kids are horrible too. Don't you realize we're always running around chasing after our kids during the holiday season? It's always like, get the fuck back here, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you. No one likes that type of stuff. So why don't you sit back, get loaded, and listen to your Uncle Elbud, or whatever the fuck his name is, or me, tell you horror stories about chasing your kids around. Ugh, kids, they don't listen even when you tell them to stop. Where are you going? Silent Hill. It essentially redefined what survival horror meant, taking kind of the horror elements of Resident Evil and Clock Tower, but meeting somewhere in the middle. Now, the game initially itself would have lost some of the horrors that it had, or should I say lack thereof, had it not been for the limitations of the PlayStation 1. What seemed like a disaster as the draw distance wasn't that far turned into a positive when they decided to turn the fog all the way up. And when you added the fog element into it, it actually added a more element of creepiness to the actual game, meaning that you couldn't necessarily see where you were going other than, what seemed like a few feet in front of you, which on paper seemed like a complete disaster for whatever your game was going towards, but it actually added to the game and the story's value overall. And for the lack of visuals, they turned to their sound department, and they added some of the most creepiest sounds that you would hear but wouldn't be able to see until it was almost right on top of you. Add that and the music on top of it, made for one hell of a gaming experience that still to this day freaks me the fuck out while I'm playing this game. Now, this game was actually recommended to me by a friend who had actually played it. He said because I like Metal Gear Solid and it was made by Konami that I should give it a go. I basically picked up the game based off of that. I very rarely other than the name Silent Hill that he told me, I knew nothing about this game when I originally got it. So stepping into it, I didn't know what to expect, but all I knew is I liked it. Another major thing that I really enjoyed about this game was, just like Metal Gear Solid, the environments weren't pre-rendered. They were kind of rendering as you went along, which means it felt like everything I touched could be interacted with. I mean, now I could obviously tell what items I can and cannot interact with, but back then, everything being 3D modeled, it was hard to tell, and I often passed up items thinking that they were just background items or whatnot. Now, I will say one thing I do not miss at all about this game, or most games of that era, are the 3D controls. They were the most god-awful, and especially with this game, because it had some weird-ass funky camera angles. And there was times where I wanted my character to go forward and he ended up going backwards because they were just too disorienting. The 3D controls, I was so happy for them to go wave bye-bye when the PS2 era came along. But back then, we had to work around the 3D controls, and because they were kind of new to me, I really didn't think twice about it. I just kind of adapted to it, but now it's hard for me to even play it. But I do endure it every so often just to relive this game, because the story in itself is really good. I do really like the story, what they went with Cheryl, and being that there's 5 different endings, which for me was kind of astonishing. Metal Gear Solid had 2, this one had 5. And it all depended on certain actions that you did throughout the game, and I actually like the replay value of that. And obviously, every Silent Hill since has always had this really weird UFO ending, which you more or less you shave about, I'd say 45 minutes off the game when you do that ending, just because you get to a certain point and you do it, and the aliens come take you away. And you see a weird cutscene, and he's asking the aliens, "Have you seen a little girl around here?" It was kind of funny. It's almost like it's an ending, but it's almost like that Easter egg ending where it's just everything's funky, weird, and nothing really makes sense. So in that regards, I love the fact that the replayability was awesome. Now, speaking of replayability, another thing that kept me coming back to this game was the fact that you can unlock certain weapons depending on how good or how bad you played the previous game. Like, I know if you did, I believe it just beat the game once, or you get normal or whatever, you actually get like a rock drill, which basically is the most retarded weapon I've ever seen. I mean, it works, but the way he like has to hold it, and you have to find gas for it first of all, then you get it. The other one is you can choose a chainsaw. Now the chainsaw is pretty good. It's kick-ass. You know, who doesn't want to go around chainsawing shit? But again, it's one of those close range things where it's very powerful but very slow and almost not worth your time. Now, one item that is definitely worth your time if you can pick up is a katana. Now that, I think you have to get one of the better ratings or better endings, and then you go back and it's a doorknob in that house that you go into, the dog house, and you twist the doorknob and it like, you enter this room and the katana the door's actually open. It starts saying lock, not blah blah blah. You go in there and the katana's sitting there. That is like the ultimate weapon. Everything dies from that katana, because in this game you don't really want to use too many guns because the ammo is limited, but the katana, if you have that son of a bitch, you'll be mowing down people, or should I say monsters, with ease with 1 or 2 hits. The only thing I don't recommend it for is some bosses you do need the weapon, like the first boss, you need the shotgun to shoot into his mouth. Everything else, I guess you could use it, but I would still use long-range weapons for most of the bosses in this game. And it's still hard for me to believe that this game itself is over 20 years old. This game came out in January of 1999. So, I mean, this game definitely, looks-wise, hasn't exactly aged the greatest, but it's aged a lot better than some of the other games. The controls, on the other hand, have not aged well at all and are perfectly right there in the toilet. I would honestly say for you to play this game, but you're going to have to get used to controls. That being said as well, I really wish they would remake this original game. And no, I'm not talking about that Shattered Memories game, which was a nice remake spin on the original, but definitely was not the original game. This is one that I would love to see remastered, but as we know, Konami's kind of poo-pooing on just about anything video game-wise. So hashtag fuck Konami, or should I say hashtag remake Silent Hill 1, and then hashtag fuck Konami. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye!